Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, as we typically do, I'm going to show you what rainfall looked like over the weekend here across the United States. And there are a few things of note that we need to be talking about in this video. First of all, what's going on in the tropics? We certainly saw Hurricane Humberto strengthen here, thankfully staying off the coast, but still bringing some widely scattered showers and storms into parts of Florida, but also into parts of the Carolinas, Georgia, and parts of Alabama. I do want to pay attention to what is going on in the tropics here because you'll see in this forecast video the potential for this particular set of disorganized thunderstorms getting into parts of Texas and then moving in this direction. And it'll be the timing of that with the storm system that's moving through the north central part of the United States that could be producing some very heavy rainfall in the central U.S. Over the weekend, some much needed rainfall in parts of Arizona and New Mexico here as this year's monsoon has been a major underperformer. And you will see multiple rounds of very heavy rainfall moving through parts of the Pacific Northwest as the Pacific is loaded with storm systems. But over the weekend, a lot of attention here, especially in the central part of the United States, was given to the storms that moved through parts of Iowa, Illinois, and then over eventually into the Great Lakes states, especially into Michigan and northern Ohio. And I'm going to take you into some of the thunderstorms that were right here in parts of Iowa because they delayed the Iowa State football game. And during one of those delays, several of the fans here, the students, decided to rush the field and do a little slipping and sliding here on the field. And while it looks like a lot of fun, this was incredibly dangerous, and I am sure that several of the meteorologists at Iowa State, and Iowa State has a phenomenal atmospheric science program, were kind of rolling their eyes and a little bit worried about their fellow students here because what was delaying this game was a lot of nearby lightning. We saw over 200,000 lightning strikes here across much of North America over the weekend, and a lot of those storms here moving through parts of northern Illinois and Iowa that afternoon. And so very kind of dangerous situation here that some of the students were putting themselves into. Broader picture though, look at how wet things have been over the last 14 days. When I make these maps, to have a 5-inch surplus of rainfall in the northern plains over the last 2 weeks is incredible. Normally we don't see that. Of course, we can see the rains over here from Dorian, but coming back to the north central plains, I want to take you to one spot right here around Sioux Falls because we still have major river flooding in this area. You can see that 9 river gauges right now are in major flooding across the United States. One's by Chicago and the rest are right here around the Sioux Falls area. And this was some satellite imagery of the Big Sioux River. You can see that was a before image. This is after of all the flooding here on the lower ground by the river. And the flood threat in this area is nowhere near to being done. This is one of several areas across the country that's been absolutely hammered this summer with just an abundant amount of rainfall. And so again, just some satellite imagery here showing you how swollen the rivers are. From Madison, South Dakota, the police actually took some incredible footage here of what some of the flooding looked like. But I want to take you right into this one image here to show you where the road has washed out. And a lot of us don't, especially a lot of us that live here in flatter parts of the world, we often don't think about what the floodwaters are doing to our road network. So just be very careful in this area because the flooding threat is nowhere near done. Now, to help us understand what's changing in terms of our moisture picture over the coming days, I want to take you to the latest drought monitor that was released back on Thursday. First of all, major improvement right into this area, certainly because of Hurricane Dorian. But over the next week to 10 days, I'm not anticipating much help with the drought that's a little bit further into the interior. Where am I expecting to see changes? Parts of Texas, here in parts of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, I expect to see some changes there. And although our monsoon has been a major underperformer, and you can now see that the drought monitor has taken some of those folks into the 3rd stage of drought, we do still expect to see more scattered showers and storms there, kind of a last hurrah from the monsoon. And this is an area that I expect to see some major improvement. And you're going to see why in just a few seconds here. Looking at our all hazards weather map, some of the big features we'll be talking about. First of all, out west, we'll come back to this in just a moment. Major fire risk today. Over parts of the Great Lakes states, specifically Wisconsin, very dense fog early this morning. But here off the southeast coast, we're still dealing with Hurricane Umberto, a Category 1 strength hurricane. Now, I want to show you something kind of neat here. A couple of weeks ago, of course, Dorian passed over the exact same location. And it was interesting. We actually found one point here where Dorian at Category 5 strength actually passed, where it is at Category 5, passed over the exact same location that the center of circulation of Umberto did. Well, this is where Umberto is going. We have pretty good guidance over the next 3 to 4 days taking it off in this direction. But days 4, 5, and 6, there's considerable spread in the potential track of Dorian due to some upper level flow kind of steering it potentially back toward, but not hitting the United States. Mostly it looks as though this system is going to stay out to open ocean here. We're not done talking about the tropics though. Even though we do need to be paying attention to this system, which the National Hurricane Center has given, an 80% chance of forming into a tropical disturbance, I think the one we really want to pay attention to is right here. But before I tell you about that system, I need you to understand what it's going to be interacting with. And this is the big features it's going to be dealing with. We have stacked up in the North Pacific 4 large storm systems. And these storm systems are going to be coming mostly into British Columbia, but some of them into the Pacific Northwest. And as they do so, they're going to be basically exciting waves over the mountains. I'm talking about big, troughs that dig in and then lift here across the central United States toward the northeast. Now, they only dig over the mountains and then they rush to the northeast, which is good for central U.S. farmers. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But before I do that, take a look at these winds right now in the Intermountain West. We have today, because of those winds, a critical fire risk in parts of Nevada, Utah, parts of Southern California, stretching all the way up into Idaho and Montana. And you can see here, this is an animation showing you the next 48 hours, our forecast for vertically integrated smoke. So you can see where the fires already are and where we're anticipating them continue to be a problem here. I mean, look at parts of Northern California. Come back and watch this again. Parts of Oregon and Idaho. This is, again, we are anticipating increased fire risk inside that region I just circled, in addition to the fires that you're already seeing here. So this is going to be a very important thing to be watching in the Western United States over the next 48 hours or so. But putting it all together, look at this. This is your next 9 days of total accumulated precip. As each one of these storm systems comes in here to the Pacific Northwest on the windward side of the mountains facing the Pacific, potentially very heavy rainfall. These troughs then dig through the mountains and then leave as a developing low pressure system right in through this corridor. And most of our model guidance has these storm systems lifting toward eastern Canada. Now, why do I say lifting instead of, well, the opposite is digging. And if we want to minimize our chances of having an early frost, we want storm systems that lift rather than dig. The problem is you can see that as they come through this corridor here, potentially picking up a lot of heavy rainfall. And you just saw me talk about how wet, incredibly wet this area is. Now, some of you folks down there in parts of Missouri and Kansas are looking at this going, you've got to be kidding me. I'm sorry, this has been one area that's been absolutely hammered this year, and we're anticipating getting more rainfall. Where's that coming from? Well, the tropical thunderstorms that we saw here in the Gulf over the weekend, slowly organizing and moving onshore into Texas. Not anticipating this being a hurricane, no. But it's the moisture that's getting pulled from that into the storm systems moving through the central United States. Who's not getting the rainfall? Well, parts of the Southwest, although there is scattered storms in the forecast, it's not wet. It's not going to make up for our deficit from the lack of a monsoon. And high pressure tends to dominate into this area in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. And as a consequence, a relatively dry and warm week is on tap in that area. Now, all of this is coming from the upper levels of the atmosphere. And as you watch the animation on the right, these are the key features I'm going to mention. One, we don't have major features to talk about like big omega patterns or high over low patterns or Greenland blocking setting up anytime soon. I am concerned that we're going to wash out a lot of the details in the second half of this forecast time period, so week 2, because when we use the ensembles, we tend to miss out on some of those subtler features. I'll show you one I'm particularly interested in a moment here. But the good news is I see storm systems lifting. They are moving toward eastern Canada, not toward the southeast. So watch what I mean. Monday into Tuesday, multiple troughs sweeping into the northwest, cooling things down, a lot of wet weather there. Now, each one of these troughs ejects into the Central Plains. This is the one that's on Wednesday here that's moving toward the Hudson Bay. What's going on before it? Big ridge, keeping temperatures much above average. Well, trough moves in. By the time we get to the weekend, it comes out of the mountains and into the Central Plains. And while it lifts again toward the Hudson Bay, the Pacific reloads here, and we got more troughs coming into the western United States. And that's going to keep a very active pattern in the longer term. Now, taking you out to the 24th, 25th, 26th, this time period, here's been some major adjustments over the weekend. The trough we've been paying close attention to last week in this area does appear to be a bit flatter, a bit more broad. And that's giving us a flow that's just less amplified at times as it moves here across this region. So you can see, it's just not the deeply amplified systems that would bring in the really, really cold air from this area. So we're going to have to watch it carefully with time here just because we're getting much closer to the climatological normal for frost. But at this point, I think the bigger story is what this is doing in terms of precipitation. So animating forward here, this is our high resolution look here, getting us all the way out to Wednesday early morning. And just stepping you back here throughout the day on Monday. What are we watching? Maybe some scattered showers and storms through parts of the Ohio River Valley getting into Pennsylvania and New York. Umberto staying offshore. Tropical thunderstorms here finally moving into Texas. See this? And it'll be those tropical thunderstorms there that move into Texas that are going to be merging with a low pressure center that's coming out of the Pacific Northwest. Not this one, but the next one. Meanwhile, a lot of storms blowing up in the mountains here on the heat of the day in the Four Corners states. Well, you can see the heavy rainfall. Watch Texas first for me. You can see the heavier rainfall moving into Texas by the time we get into 8 a.m. on Tuesday. See it there? Now, there's some folks down there that desperately need this rainfall. While the first system comes out of Idaho into Wyoming and Montana. And as that one ejects into the Central Plains on Tuesday evening, we will watch this area for the potential for some severe thunderstorms. Trough number 2, though, is not wasting any time, and it's already hitting the Pacific Northwest. And that will be the trough that makes a much larger low-pressure system that's going to pull this moisture. Here we are, 4 a.m. on Wednesday. Pull this moisture north. Meanwhile, as this system moves through the north central plains, some locally very heavy rainfall. Let's just step this back and show you right here. This in the overnight hours, Tuesday into Wednesday, that we could see some more heavy rainfall. But that's just system number 1 and part of system number 2. Where's the next one really get going? Well, let's pause it right here, 7 p.m. on Tuesday. You've seen this far. Okay. System 1, pulling up into the Hudson Bay. Tropical disturbance here coming into Texas. Next big wave, next big trough coming into the Pacific Northwest. Now watch this. As we move forward, this low leaves its front right here. It gets taken up as a warm front into the next low pressure system that'll be forming in the high plains. And as that system forms, it's going to draw moisture out of this system coming through Texas and plant it all right in through this corridor. See? This is now Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, getting into Friday morning. Kind of jump there quickly. Now the moisture's coming up in through here. The system's taking shape in the central plains. And there it goes by Friday into Saturday morning. And now we've drawn the moisture from Texas into this system, so this corridor wet. Multiple fronts moving through the Corn Belt, keeping things relatively wet. And unfortunately, some very wet conditions that are hitting the same area that we've been dealing with so much flooding. High pressure, firmly in control here, though. That's why we saw the drier than normal conditions. Now, what I want to do next is I want to take you right here. This is now getting into Saturday, Sunday, and early Monday. Let's assume that the model has nailed the track of this system, which takes it just like this. We can see that behind it, higher atmospheric pressure will be building into this area, such that by, let's just take you out to 7 a.m. on Monday, with that high pressure and some northerly winds, very light, we could be bringing in another frost threat for this area. But this is perfectly normal for this time of year for that particular corridor. Not enough cold air getting south, though, to have cause any sort of concern here. All right? Now, let's take this over to that temperature discussion since I brought it up. Certainly over the next few days, the deep troughs out west keeping things cool and this big ridge pumping in, well, in some locations, 15 to 20 degrees warmer than average conditions. But by the time we get out to days 6 through 10, remember our storm system's still lifting in this direction. The warmth comes in like this, so still maintaining some above average temperatures. But behind each system, we may get temporary cool downs as the system kind of exits. So this again is just putting 5 days together here. You see the warmer bias. And because I told you the models are trying to flatten everything out, days 11 through 15, well, we still have that storm track that does something like this, but maybe our warmer than average conditions are mainly confined to the southern tier of the United States moving forward. Certainly the Pacific Northwest, boy, you hang on to your cool bias for quite some time here. All right. From there, let's do a quick international look here. Over the weekend, we saw torrential rains moving through parts of Spain. What's animating on the left there is the forecast that was given before these rains got here. And on the right, that's some of the devastating flooding that we saw. And what's crazy about this is see some of these cars getting tossed around in the floodwaters here in Valencia. They came right, look at that, they came right over, gosh, this waterfall. And you notice that the brakes get thrown on that car. I'm worried that somebody was in that car while that was happening. Incredible to see that video. Well, where are we going in Europe? I think the bigger story for Europe is not going to be the precipitation this week. It's going to be the temperature fluctuations. We'll be seeing a warm-up on this side of Europe beginning early this week and getting there by the time we get to the weekend. But the cooler weather that you see here that's in parts of the Russian wheat belt in Ukraine, well, that particular area by next Saturday and Sunday, early in the day, I am seeing here below freezing temperatures setting up in this area, and some of those may be making it into Ukraine. So that is, I don't know how far along the crop is in that area, but it's at least a freezing temperature forecast here by the end of this week into next weekend for that region. Meanwhile, in China, remember our main growing regions are here and here. This particular area, in several of my videos, I've talked about how dry things have been. Next 10 days looks dry there as well. Even northeastern China's main growing area is looking very, very dry, as much of the action stays out here with typhoons that are staying offshore. And to finish this up, I want to talk about South America. As the Madden-Julian Oscillation moves out of its null phase here into phases 8, 1, and 2, these are the most favorable phases for the growing season for South America for enhancing the monsoon. So we do see in the near-term forecast an enhancement of what's called the low-level jet that gets into something called the South American Convergence Zone. So strong winds in through here, coming through Bolivia into parts of Paraguay, help to enhance the transport of moisture in this particular direction. And so we are anticipating some above-average precipitation in parts of the Amazon. Yet if I remove those drawings, just remember that this is the corridor right in through here in Brazil that has, is in major drought right now. And it's down here in the southern parts of Brazil where they've actually been quite wet recently. So while this isn't going to be the most ideal return of moisture, and it looks to be short-lived in the models, we do need to be paying close attention, because the moment that the moisture profile comes back up in Brazil, there will be rapid planting progress. I'm not anticipating that out of this system, out of this pulse, I should say, in the MJO. And if the MJO continues over into phases 3, 4, and 5, these are the drier phases of the monsoon of the MJO for the monsoon in South America. So we're just going to keep watching it every single video we put out just to make sure that we know why the monsoon is delayed and when it will eventually arrive. But with that, I'm going to go and wrap up our forecast video right here. We at Nutrien thank you for your attention. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.